What if the person you think you are is only a fragment of your true self? Beneath your daily routines, social roles, and carefully crafted identity lies a hidden psychological universe, an inner landscape shaped by forces you don't fully understand. It speaks in your dreams, drives your fears, fuels your desires, and influences every choice you make. This world isn't random. It has a structure, a language, and a purpose. And Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant minds in psychology, mapped it out. Through his groundbreaking theories, Jung revealed that within each of us exists a complex living system of hidden archetypes, unconscious shadows, and a deeper self longing to be realized. His work isn't just theory, it's a mirror that reflects your inner conflicts, hidden potential, and the path to a more meaningful, authentic life. This is a journey into the depths of the psyche, not to escape reality, but to understand it from within. Because real transformation doesn't happen on the surface. It begins in the shadowed corners of the mind, where truth waits patiently to be seen. Have you ever felt like there's more to you than what you show the world? Maybe a strange dream lingers in your mind, or a sudden emotion catches you off guard, one that doesn't seem to come from your conscious thoughts. According to Carl Jung, these moments are not random. They are invitations into a vast, mysterious landscape that lies beneath the surface of our daily awareness, a world he called the psyche. Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, wasn't interested only in treating mental illness. He wanted to map the entire human experience, to understand why we do, what drives us from within, and how we can live more authentic, whole lives. To him, the human psyche wasn't just a collection of thoughts and feelings. It was a living system made up of layers. Some we are aware of, and many more we are not. At the center of Jung's work is the idea that our psyche is like an iceberg. The small, visible tip is our conscious mind, the part that plans, decides, and reacts to the world. But beneath that surface lies a massive structure of unconscious material. Memories, desires, instincts, fears, and inherited symbols. Jung believed that understanding these hidden layers is essential to becoming truly ourselves. Unlike Freud, who focused largely on childhood experiences and sexual drives, Jung believed the human mind is more than just a storage place for past wounds. He saw it as a journey toward meaning and wholeness. He argued that each person has an inborn drive to grow, to expand, and to integrate all parts of themselves, including the ones they'd rather ignore. This process, which he called individuation, is at the heart of personal development. But the path to individuation is not easy. It requires us to look at the parts of ourselves we've rejected or denied. It means recognizing that we're not always who we think we are, and that sometimes we act from motives we barely understand. Why do we repeat the same relationship patterns? Why do we sabotage our own goals? Jung believed these behaviors often come from the unconscious, which uses symbols, dreams, and archetypes to express what words cannot. One of the most fascinating aspects of Jung's psychology is his view of dreams. He believed dreams are messages from the unconscious, filled with symbols that reflect our inner state. A snake in a dream isn't just a snake. It might represent transformation, fear, or instinctual energy. A house might symbolize the self. Unlike many modern views that reduce dreams to mere brain activity, Jung treated them as guides, offering clues to what our deeper self wants us to know. Jung also explored the idea that much of our inner world is not unique to us as individuals. He proposed that we share a deeper layer of the psyche with all humanity, the collective unconscious. This is where ancient images, myths, and patterns live, what he called archetypes. Whether you live in Tokyo or New York, the story of the hero, the wise old man, the mother figure, or the trickster will resonate with you. These universal patterns shape how we see the world and how we experience ourselves. So why does any of this matter? Because so many of our modern struggles, anxiety, depression, identity confusion, can be traced back to a disconnection from the deeper self. Jung's approach doesn't just treat symptoms, it calls us to go deeper, to ask real questions. Who am I beneath my roles and labels? What is trying to emerge in me? What parts of myself have I left behind? Jung's map of the psyche is not a rigid formula, but a living, breathing process of discovery. It respects the mystery of being human. It acknowledges that there is a sacred depth within each of us, waiting to be explored. And it suggests that healing and growth come not from perfection, but from integration, bringing all our parts, even the uncomfortable ones, into the light. As we begin this journey through Jung's psychological map, remember, this is not just a theory, it's a path, a way of seeing yourself and your life as something far more meaningful, complex, and alive than you might have imagined. The invitation has been given. The door to the inner world is open. Are you ready to walk through it? Imagine waking up in the morning. You brush your teeth, check your phone, decide what to wear, and think about what you'll do today. This part of you that's aware, alert, and making decisions, that's what Carl Jung called the ego. But in Jung's model of the human psyche, the ego is just the beginning. It's the surface level of a much deeper system. In fact, he believed that most of what truly influences our behavior lies beyond the ego in the unconscious. Still, the ego plays a vital role. It gives us a sense of identity, a feeling of I in a world full of people and experiences. The ego, according to Jung, is not the enemy. It's essential. It helps us navigate daily life. It tells us who we are, at least on the surface. Our name, our job, our preferences, our memories, our goals. Without the ego, we wouldn't be able to function in society. It's like the captain of a ship steering through the ocean of life. But here's the thing. The ego is not the ocean. It's just the part that tries to control the direction on its small patch of water. Beneath that lies a deep sea of unconscious forces we often overlook. Most people live entirely through the ego. They identify only with their conscious thoughts and actions, believing, "This is who I am." But Jung warned that this is a limited view. The ego thinks it knows everything, but in truth, it knows very little. It's like standing in a spotlight on a dark stage and assuming the whole theater is lit. Jung called for humility. He reminded us that the ego is not the center of the universe. It's just one part of a larger whole. This ego-centered view becomes a problem when we start rejecting anything that doesn't fit our conscious identity. For example, if someone sees themselves as kind and gentle, they might deny or repress their anger or competitiveness. But those rejected traits don't just disappear. They move into the unconscious, forming what Jung called the shadow, a hidden side of ourselves we'll explore more deeply later. For now, it's important to understand that the ego doesn't just shape our awareness, it also filters it. It decides what we accept about ourselves and what we push away. The ego also plays a role in how we interact with the outer world. It forms what Jung called the persona, the mask we wear in public. This is the version of ourselves we present to others, shaped by social expectations and norms. For instance, you might act differently at work than you do at home. Your professional persona may be calm and responsible, while your private self is silly and emotional. The ego manages these roles, helping you adapt to different environments. But again, problems arise when we become overly identified with our persona and forget who we truly are beneath it. Jung's message here is subtle but powerful. We need the ego, but we shouldn't let it dominate us. It's like a helpful tool that can become dangerous if it thinks it's the master. People who are too ego-driven often suffer from rigidity, defensiveness, or an inflated sense of self. On the other hand, those with a weak or damaged ego may feel lost, unsure of who they are, easily influenced by others. The key is balance. To grow psychologically, Jung believed we must first become conscious of the ego's limits. We must observe our thoughts, notice our reactions, question our assumptions. Meditation, journaling, therapy, and dream analysis are all ways to step outside the ego and witness it from a broader perspective. It's not about destroying the ego, but about putting it in its rightful place, one piece of a much bigger puzzle. In the end, the ego is not the villain of Jung's psychology. It's simply the starting point. Like a traveler setting out on a long journey, the ego is where we begin. It gets us moving, gives us a sense of self, and allows us to function in a complex world. But if we stop there, if we believe that the ego is all there is, we remain shallow, fragmented, and disconnected from the deeper forces shaping our lives. Jung invites us to become aware of the ego without becoming trapped by it, to use it as a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, to realize that while the ego may be the tip of the iceberg, what lies beneath is vast, rich, and full of the keys to our true self. Imagine a giant underground chamber inside your mind, filled with forgotten memories, emotional wounds, unrealized talents, and secret desires. This is what Carl Jung called the personal unconscious. It's a vast, hidden layer of your psyche that stores everything you've experienced but are not currently aware of. You may have forgotten much of what's in there, but it hasn't forgotten you. It still influences your thoughts, feelings, and actions in subtle, powerful ways. The personal unconscious is unique to you, unlike the collective unconscious, which we'll explore later and is shared by all humans. The personal unconscious is built from your own life. It includes things like childhood memories you don't recall, emotions you suppressed, beliefs you inherited from your family, and patterns you developed to survive or fit in. Some of this content was once conscious but got pushed down because it was painful, uncomfortable, or simply not useful at the time. Jung believed that this buried content doesn't just sit there. It actively shapes your behavior. For example, let's say you were once laughed at in school for singing out loud. You might not consciously remember that moment, but later in life, you may avoid expressing your voice, fearing judgment without knowing why. This is how the personal unconscious works. It holds emotional experiences that continue to affect us, even when we're unaware of them. But the personal unconscious isn't just filled with wounds or problems. It also contains potential, talents that were never nurtured, parts of your personality that were never allowed to grow, inner resources you haven't yet discovered. These forgotten parts of you are waiting in the wings, hoping to be brought into consciousness. Jung believed that true psychological healing and growth often happen when we reclaim these parts and integrate them into our identity. One of the most fascinating aspects of the personal unconscious is the way it communicates. It doesn't speak in logic or words. Instead, it speaks in symbols, dreams, slips of the tongue, emotional reactions, and projections. A dream about a locked room might reflect a part of yourself that you've shut away. Getting unusually angry at someone could be a sign that they're mirroring something you're avoiding in yourself. When we react strongly to people or situations, Jung suggested asking, "What is this really touching in me?" To understand the personal unconscious, Jung encouraged self-observation and inner work. He often used dream analysis to explore the messages from the unconscious. In his view, dreams are not random. They are meaningful attempts by the unconscious to balance the psyche. For example, if your ego is overly confident, your dreams might humble you by showing vulnerability. If you're ignoring your creative side, a dream might present a child or artist figure calling for your attention. Jung also talked about complexes, clusters of related thoughts, feelings, and memories in the personal unconscious. For instance, a mother complex might cause someone to react strongly to authority figures or nurturing behavior, depending on their early relationship with their mother. These complexes operate like mini personalities inside us. They can hijack our emotions, distort our thinking, and lead us to behave in ways we don't fully understand. Recognizing and working with these complexes can be a powerful step in reclaiming control over your inner world. Another important idea is repression. This is when the ego pushes certain thoughts or emotions out of awareness because they're too difficult to face. But repression doesn't erase these experiences. It just buries them in the unconscious, where they may show up later as anxiety, depression, or self-sabotage. Jung believed healing involves bringing these repressed elements into conscious awareness, not to blame or judge, but to understand and integrate them. So how can we engage with the personal unconscious in daily life? The key is curiosity and honesty. Pay attention to your dreams, your emotional triggers, your fantasies, your fears. When you feel stuck or confused, instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" ask, "What part of me is being left out?" That shift in perspective opens the door to healing. In the end, the personal unconscious is like a forgotten attic full of treasures, shadows, and clues about who you really are. It holds your private myths, your pain, your potential, and the stories that shaped you. Jung didn't see it as something to fear, but as something to explore, because within this hidden part of you lies the raw material for growth, transformation, and wholeness. When we dare to look inward, to face what we've buried, we begin to truly know ourselves, not just who we appear to be, but who we really are. Beneath the layers of our everyday thoughts, and even below our personal unconscious lies something even deeper, more mysterious, and more universal. Carl Jung called this the collective unconscious, a vast inherited layer of the psyche that every human being shares. It is not shaped by personal experience, culture, or education. Instead, it is the psychological foundation of human existence, filled with ancient patterns, instinctual wisdom, and timeless symbols that guide our behavior, dreams, and even the stories we tell across cultures. Think of it like the DNA of the human mind. Just as we inherit physical traits from our ancestors, eye color, bone structure, blood type, we also inherit psychological tendencies. These tendencies aren't specific memories, but rather deep, unconscious forms or blueprints that Jung called archetypes. They shape how we experience life. The collective unconscious is filled with these archetypes, and they live in all of us, regardless of where or when we were born. One of the most compelling arguments for the collective unconscious is the way certain themes appear again and again across human cultures. Think about myths, religions, and fairy tales. No matter where you go in the world, you'll find versions of the same characters. The hero, the mother, the wise old man, the trickster, the monster, the lover. Why do these characters appear over and over? Jung believed it was because they come from the same deep source, the collective unconscious. They are not just cultural creations, but psychic realities that reflect the shared structure of the human mind. For example, the mother archetype exists in all cultures. It might appear as the nurturing Virgin Mary in Christianity, the fierce goddess Kali in Hinduism, or the Earth Mother in indigenous traditions. These figures represent the same underlying archetype, the source of life, care, protection, and sometimes destruction. Even if someone didn't grow up with a loving mother, the idea of mother is still present in their psyche because it comes from the collective unconscious, not just personal memory. Another powerful archetype is the hero. In countless stories, the hero is someone who leaves the ordinary world, faces great challenges, defeats a threat, and returns transformed. From Hercules to Harry Potter, this archetypal journey resonates deeply with us because it mirrors our inner journey of growth and transformation. According to Jung, we don't just enjoy these stories, we live them internally. The collective unconscious provides the script, and our personal lives become the stage where the drama plays out. But the collective unconscious isn't just about stories and symbols. It actively influences how we see the world, even when we don't realize it. When you meet someone and instantly feel they are trustworthy, or when a place feels sacred even though you've never been there before, that may be the collective unconscious at work. It bypasses logic and speaks in intuition, emotion, and symbolic language. Jung believed that dreams are one of the main ways the collective unconscious communicates with us. A dream about a snake, for instance, might not just be about a personal fear. Snakes have symbolized transformation and healing for thousands of years. In ancient cultures, they were seen as guardians of sacred knowledge. So when a snake appears in your dream, it might be carrying a message from the collective unconscious about change, danger, or spiritual awakening. Interestingly, Jung's idea of the collective unconscious has been supported in surprising ways by modern science. Studies in evolutionary psychology and neuroscience suggest that humans are indeed born with certain mental structures like facial recognition, fear of snakes, or language acquisition that don't come from learning but from evolution. Jung was ahead of his time in seeing that the mind is not a blank slate, but a living system with inherited patterns. Understanding the collective unconscious invites a profound shift in how we see ourselves. We're not isolated individuals making random choices. We're part of a much bigger story. We carry within us the wisdom of generations, the struggles of humanity, and the dreams of our ancestors. When we connect with this deeper layer, life becomes more meaningful. We begin to see that our personal journey is also a universal one. Jung didn't see the collective unconscious as something mystical or supernatural. It was simply the shared psychological foundation of being human. And while it can seem mysterious, it's not beyond our reach. Through introspection, dream work, art, mythology, and spiritual exploration, we can connect with this powerful layer of the psyche. It reminds us that we are never truly alone. Within us live echoes of every human who has ever lived. And by listening to those echoes, we find not only who we are, but who we were always meant to be. Every person has a side they show to the world, a version of themselves shaped by values, culture, family, and personal choices. But behind that visible self, there exists a hidden world, a place where rejected traits, denied emotions, and uncomfortable truths are stored. Carl Jung called this hidden world the shadow. It's not just a poetic metaphor, it's a real and powerful part of the human psyche that influences your behavior, decisions, and emotions more than you might realize. According to Jung, the shadow forms as we grow up and learn what is acceptable and what isn't. As children, we quickly learn that some feelings like anger, jealousy, pride, or even certain desires are not welcomed by our families, teachers, or society. To be loved and accepted, we push these parts away, burying them in the unconscious. But these traits don't disappear. They live on as the shadow, the side of ourselves we don't want to admit exists. The shadow can include both negative and positive traits. It might hold aggression, manipulation, laziness, or cruelty, but also creativity, passion, confidence, and strength that was once discouraged or shamed. Jung believed that the shadow is not evil by nature. Rather, it's made up of everything we've pushed into darkness, often without understanding it. In this way, it becomes a container for immense potential as well as danger. What makes the shadow so tricky is that it's unconscious. We usually don't see it in ourselves, but we do see it in others. This is what Jung called projection. When someone annoys or angers you for reasons you can't explain, it might be because they're showing you a part of your own shadow. Maybe you dislike someone for being loud, when deep down you wish you had the confidence to speak freely. Or maybe you envy someone's ambition, even though you've always been told to stay humble. The traits we deny in ourselves often show up in our relationships with others. This is why Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The people who trigger us the most are often mirrors reflecting our disowned parts. Shadow projection can cause conflict, judgment, and broken relationships if left unconscious. But if we learn to recognize it, it becomes a doorway to healing and growth. Facing the shadow isn't easy. It requires honesty, humility, and courage. It means admitting, I'm not always kind. I can be selfish. I have fears I don't talk about. I want things I pretend I don't. Most people avoid this inner confrontation because it feels uncomfortable or shameful. But Jung argued that ignoring the shadow only makes it stronger. Repressed, unconscious material doesn't stay quiet. It leaks out in unexpected ways: passive aggression, sudden rage, anxiety, depression, or even illness. The goal of Jungian psychology is not to destroy the shadow, but to integrate it. Integration means acknowledging these hidden parts, understanding where they come from, and giving them a voice. It's about bringing light into darkness. When we integrate the shadow, we don't become perfect, we become whole. We stop being divided against ourselves. Instead of being controlled by hidden impulses, we learn to work with them consciously. Jung called this process shadow work. It can take many forms: deep reflection, journaling, dream analysis, honest conversations, and sometimes therapy. Often the shadow appears in dreams as a dark figure, a monster, or a threatening stranger. These figures are not there to harm you. They're symbols of the parts of you that want to be recognized. Shadow work isn't about becoming good in a moral sense. It's about becoming authentic. Only by facing what we fear in ourselves can we grow into our full potential. Importantly, Jung saw the shadow not as a problem to be fixed, but as a guide. He believed that the path to personal transformation goes straight through the shadow. In myths and stories, the hero often has to descend into a dark cave or battle a beast before finding treasure. That's what shadow work is, a descent into the inner darkness to reclaim lost power and truth. In modern life, ignoring the shadow can lead to a shallow, performative existence. We act kind but feel resentful. We say yes when we mean no. We chase goals that don't reflect who we really are. But when we confront the shadow, we begin to live more honestly. We accept our complexity. We find freedom from pretending, and we make peace with the parts of ourselves we were once afraid to face. In the end, the shadow is not your enemy. It's your unlived self. It holds the key to deep emotional healing and inner strength. By facing the dark within, you don't become darker. You become brighter, more grounded, and more real. The journey into the shadow is the path to self-understanding and ultimately to self-acceptance. Deep within the psyche, beyond the personal unconscious, live ancient universal patterns of human thought and behavior that Carl Jung called archetypes. These are not fixed personalities or stereotypes. Instead, they are living psychological forces, blueprints of the human experience that shape how we see the world, how we relate to others, and how we understand ourselves. Archetypes are the shared inner images that give form to our dreams, myths, religions, stories, and even everyday emotions. Jung believed that these archetypes arise from the collective unconscious, and they appear throughout all cultures and histories. You don't have to be told what a mother, a hero, or a villain is to recognize them. These characters live inside you. They appear in dreams, in fantasies, in the roles you play in relationships, and even in the choices you make without knowing why. Let's explore some of the key archetypes Jung described. One of the most important is the self. This is not the same as your ego or your personality. It is the whole of who you are, both conscious and unconscious. The self is the guiding force that pushes you toward wholeness. It's the archetype of unity, balance, and completeness. It often shows up in dreams as a circle, a mandala, or a wise figure. When people go through major life changes or spiritual awakenings, they're often being led by the self, seeking deeper meaning and inner harmony. Then there is the persona, the mask we wear to fit into society. Your persona is the version of you that the world sees. Your job title, your social role, your public image. While it's useful and necessary, it can also become a trap. If we identify too much with the persona, we begin to lose touch with who we really are. Jung warned that the danger of the persona is that we may come to believe that we are the mask, forgetting the deeper, more complex self beneath it. The anima and animus are two more powerful archetypes that reflect the inner feminine in men. Anima and the inner masculine in women, animus. These aren't about gender identity, they're about psychic balance. For Jung, every man has an inner anima that connects him to emotion, intuition, and sensitivity. Every woman has an inner animus that connects her to logic, assertiveness, and independence. When these inner figures are undeveloped or ignored, they can distort relationships. But when integrated, they lead to richer, more balanced personalities. Perhaps the most well-known archetype is the hero. The hero's journey appears in myths, movies, and our own lives. The hero faces trials, descends into darkness, overcomes inner and outer challenges, and returns transformed. It's not just a story, it's a map for personal growth. Whenever you face a fear, take a risk, or break free from something that once controlled you, you're living the hero's journey. Jung believed that by recognizing this pattern in your life, you become more conscious of your own development. Another archetype is the wise old man or woman. This figure appears in stories as a mentor, guide, or spiritual teacher, but it's not just about external people. It represents your inner wisdom, the part of you that already knows the truth. When you're stuck or lost and a quiet voice tells you what you really need, that's this archetype speaking. Jung saw this figure as crucial for inner guidance, especially during times of uncertainty. Then there's the trickster, a chaotic, mischievous archetype that breaks rules, turns things upside down, and forces you to question everything. The trickster can be annoying or even destructive, but it also brings creativity and transformation. It pushes you out of your comfort zone. When life feels unfair or unpredictable, when your plans fall apart for no reason, you may be encountering this energy. The trickster is uncomfortable, but necessary. It breaks old structures to make room for something new. Jung emphasized that archetypes are not just ideas, they are living forces within the psyche. You don't control them, they move you. But the more you become aware of them, the more consciously you can work with them. For example, if you feel trapped in a relationship, are you playing the victim or the martyr? If you constantly rescue others, are you caught in the savior or mother archetype? Awareness helps you step out of unconscious roles and make empowered choices. Importantly, Jung believed that the goal of life is not to become one archetype, but to integrate them all. We carry many inner figures, and each one holds a key to who we are. The more we understand them, the more whole we become. So archetypes are not distant myths or literary symbols. They live inside you. They speak through your dreams, your emotions, and your patterns. They are your inner cast of characters, your personal mythology, and by getting to know them, you begin to understand not just your own story, but the story of humanity itself. At the heart of Carl Jung's psychology lies one of his most profound and life-changing concepts: individuation. Unlike simply growing older or becoming more successful, individuation is the deep inner journey of becoming your most authentic self. It's the process through which the conscious and unconscious parts of the mind come into harmony, allowing a person to live with greater awareness, balance, and meaning. According to Jung, individuation is not optional. It is the natural unfolding of the psyche's potential, the purpose of life itself. Most people live with only a small part of themselves fully expressed. We present a carefully shaped persona to the world, an image built to meet others' expectations. Behind this mask lies our shadow, filled with rejected traits and hidden desires. Deeper still is the collective unconscious, where powerful archetypes live, waiting to be discovered and integrated. Individuation is the lifelong process of exploring all these layers and gradually unifying them into a whole conscious identity. This process often begins with a crisis or inner conflict. You might feel lost, emotionally numb, or deeply unfulfilled despite outer success. These moments of discomfort are signs that something inside is trying to awaken. Jung believed that the psyche wants to be whole. When we ignore parts of ourselves, whether it's emotion, intuition, creativity, or unexpressed potential, those parts eventually demand attention. Through dreams, anxieties, life events, or relationships, the unconscious begins to call us inward. A central part of individuation is confronting and integrating the shadow. This means acknowledging the aspects of yourself that you've denied or suppressed. It's not easy. No one likes to admit they can be jealous, angry, insecure, or selfish. But until these parts are faced, they control you from the dark. Once recognized and accepted, they lose their power to sabotage and instead become sources of insight, energy, and even strength. Another key stage is meeting and integrating the anima or animus, the inner feminine in men and the inner masculine in women. This helps balance your emotional and rational sides, your nurturing and assertive qualities. For example, a man who embraces his anima may become more empathetic and emotionally open. A woman who integrates her animus may gain confidence in expressing her voice and taking action. These inner unions create psychological wholeness and improve relationships with others. Jung also emphasized the role of dreams in the individuation process. Dreams are messages from the unconscious, offering clues about what we need to understand, face, or change. Often dreams reveal conflicts we are avoiding or parts of ourselves we've neglected. Working with dreams by interpreting their symbols and reflecting on their meaning helps bring unconscious material into conscious awareness. Through this process, we gradually come into contact with the self, the central archetype of wholeness. The self is not the ego, not the person you try to be, but the totality of who you are. Conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, rational and intuitive. Encountering the self often feels like a spiritual experience. It brings a deep sense of unity, purpose, and peace. Life begins to feel less like something to control and more like a journey to understand and align with. Importantly, individuation is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real, fully human, fully alive, and aware of your inner world. It's a journey, not a destination. Along the way, you'll lose old identities, face uncomfortable truths, and question long-held beliefs. But in return, you gain freedom from unconscious patterns, deeper self-acceptance, and a clearer sense of meaning. Jung saw individuation as the key to both personal and collective healing. A person who has faced their inner world becomes less reactive, less judgmental, and more compassionate. They stop projecting their wounds onto others and take responsibility for their life. This creates more authentic relationships, healthier communities, and a more conscious world. In a culture that often encourages conformity, busyness, and surface-level success, Jung's idea of individuation is revolutionary. It asks you to slow down, look within, and honor your own unique path. It invites you to listen to your dreams, explore your inner conflicts, and embrace your full complexity. You are not here to be like everyone else. You are here to become yourself. So, individuation is not just a psychological theory. It's a call to adventure. The adventure of uncovering your true self. The road is long and often challenging, but it leads to something more valuable than approval or comfort. It leads to authenticity, wholeness, and a life that is deeply and truly your own.